Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, back in the Fandom Zone, ready to talk The Umbrella Academy with my wonderful co-host, wonderful friend, and fellow human being trying to figure out what to do on Labor Day weekend when there's everything shut down because of a pandemic. Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am great, Charles. I am really excited about talking about this series. You had shared for a while how much you really enjoyed it. And so I just recently watched it, and when we were talking about what to talk about next, I was eager to join you to talk about kind of a unique series.
Yes. So here at episode 190, getting close to 200, we are going to talk season 1 of the Umbrella Academy. We're going to do our little review, season review. We're not doing breaking it down by individual episodes once a week. We're going to do the entire season at once. And of course, this was season 1 of the Umbrella Academy, which debuted on Netflix way back on February 15th, 2019. So yours truly was on this one. Jesse's just now getting caught up after hearing me and apparently his wife try to get him into this. So he ignored what I was saying, but once his wife got involved, Jesse was right there. So I guess props to being devoted to your wife.
Not quite the story, but there is elements of certainly truth in there. No, what had happened is, and you know this feeling as well, Charles, there's so much out there, you just can't get to it all.
Yeah.
And I had not read the comic, so this was just something like, I gotta watch it. I gotta watch this. And a couple weeks ago, my wife is retired now, so she can binge a lot more TV than I can. And I got home, and she's like, man, Susan, who's her workout partner, recommended the Umbrella Academy. I'm watching it, and it's really good. And I look like, what? What? Okay, I know the Umbrella Academy is pure comic book science fiction, and you don't watch any of that. Why are you doing it? She goes, well, Susan recommended, and it's got all kinds of time travel stuff and things, but it's really good. So we did a little bit of a, okay, you're cheating on me discussion, right?
Yeah.
Like when you binge stuff as a couple. So she's watched the first season. We've held off. We're going to watch the second season together. But I'm like, okay, if it's that good, she's watched it. Charles has watched it. I've got to do it. And this is one of those things where you go, I kind of regret being late to the party.
Yeah.
But I'm still happy I got there all together.
Well,
now,
better late than never, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
hang on, and then I want to ask you a question.
Go for
it. There's a line that I love in West Wing where C.J. Craig asks Sam Seaborn a question, and he says, we're going to ignore the fact that you're late to the dance, and we're going to embrace the fact that you attended it all.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where I am on that. Where you had read the comic, I take it, right? Talk to me a little bit about your background with this series.
Well, so give a little background on this TV series a little bit before I get into that. This is based off of the first Umbrella Academy miniseries, the Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite, which came out back in 2007, 2008 from Dark Horse Comics. It ran for 6 issues, written by Gerard and Gabriel. And a lot of people had talked about this series. It had like a little bit of a cult following, kind of, a little bit, it was very much in kind of like a little bit of a Doom Patrol kind of vibe, very quirky, very offbeat comic, where you had, in this case, you have a family of superheroes with superpowers, but they all have these, like very distinct personalities, and it's more kind of like a superhero family drama in this case.
Right.
So I heard about it, then I checked out the comic. I really enjoyed the first one. There were some things, that I thought could have been better written, but overall, I really enjoyed the comic. I love the creativity. I love the imagination in this series. And because Gerard Way does bring that, he is very much like I don't know, almost like a poor man's Grant Morrison in a lot of ways. He's not as good as Grant Morrison, but he's good in his own right. So I don't want to downplay him too much, but because he is very good. But in the art style by Gabriel Bay, kind of angular, almost kind of like a Mike Mignola, the guy who created Hellboy, in a lot of ways. But so I checked that out, and then I liked that, and then I liked the second miniseries that came out, Dallas, which has some elements that are adapted here in season 1, even though the main story isn't addressed until season 2 on the TV show. And so I was into it, and then I knew about it, and then when the TV show came out, I was very excited, and was right there on February 15th, 2019, eagerly devouring these episodes because I was at least familiar with the comic, and I was curious about it, and I was very pleasantly surprised at how good this show was.
Yeah, I could, and once again, right, there's so much comics out there that you kind of miss things, and so I had not heard of this, and
well, you're kind of out of the comics game these days.
I am not a I'm a
even though this was out in like 2007, 2008. Yeah.
I'm reading Silver Age Superboy trade paperback right now that I just got.
A little after your time.
Yes, indeed. But I got into this, and we're going to get into specifics. The TV series does a great job of kind of setting up who the characters are, kind of getting the feeling of what's happening. A lot of flashbacks back and forth telling the story. I think this is really creative and very well done, Charles. I'm glad that we're going to talk about it, and I'm glad this has been so successful. It's nice to hear when they honor the source material and do well with it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, like there are some notable differences from the comics, which we can get into later if we have time. But so it's not really a straightforward adaptation. I'd say this first season is probably maybe a 50-60% adaptation of the original Umbrella Academy Apocalypse miniseries with, like I said, a little bit of Dallas, the follow-up, thrown in. But for the most part, yeah, it kind of takes the basic concepts, the basic characters, and for the most part is kind of faithful to those. I mean, the characters are very recognizable if you read the comic, but in your case, if you haven't read the comic, I think these characters are, very relatable in a lot of ways. You're going to, essentially, it's a big family, like I talked about, and there's a lot of distinct personalities, so you might like some family members more than other family members and may connect with certain ones. But they all bring something to the table. And you get a great vibe of, even with their dysfunction, it's kind of a dysfunctional family, but you get a vibe that these characters really do care about one another. And I think that's the heart of the series for me.
Yeah. So do you know anything about, I guess... Jeremy Slater is the showrunner on
executive
this.
Producer. Yeah.
So you usually have trivia or backgrounds. I did not know much about this guy.
Yeah, I didn't come prepared for that, but
okay, sorry. Well,
that's all right.
According to IMDb, he worked on the Exorcist TV series, Fantastic Four screenplay, and he has been announced he's doing a Moon Knight TV series.
Yeah, after Umbrella Academy, that would be fantastic because I'm a
Yes.
big Moon Knight fan.
I am a big Moon Knight fan too. I remember that, so I think that could be interesting. So this guy does not have a long
Resume.
pedigree, right? Like, I do not remember watching the Exorcist TV series. I probably wouldn't. I'm not a horror guy.
It was very short-lived, so yeah.
And this is the 2015 Fantastic Four with Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara.
The one that everybody hates, yes.
Yes.
The most maligned, one of the worst comic book films ever made kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah, so he doesn't have a long pedigree, but I really think...
But to be fair, he wrote the script, didn't direct the movie.
Yeah, exactly. And, sometimes the screenplay can move on. Really... And so I'm looking forward to the topics you came up with. As usual, You're doing the heavy lifting of getting us through, but this is going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah. So, I'm going to ask you a little bit. Now, do you want to talk about the characters first, or do we want to start breaking down episode by episode?
So I probably characters. I would have to. I've got IMDb up to kind of remind me of the.
Because we only have an hour. We got 10 episodes to get through, so we're going to have to hit this pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking more if maybe we just talk characters and overall arcs instead of necessary episodes.
Okay. Well, there's a lot going on in this series, and a lot of it's very convoluted. So I thought breaking it down by episode would kind of make it a little more coherent.
Okay, that sounds good
for people. So. But let's talk about the characters first. So let's talk about the Hargreaves family, shall we say? First and foremost, let's break it down. Number one, because one of the most interesting things about this is that these characters, the lead characters, were essentially the premise of this show is that back on October 1st, 1989, 43 women around the world simultaneously give birth, despite showing no prior signs of pregnancy. And 7 of the children are found and adopted by this eccentric billionaire named Sir Reginald Hargreaves, who raises them as a superhero team. That's the basic premise. And so what he does is he's very straightforward, very controlling father, quote unquote, to them. He assigns, numbers to them, not actual individual identities. So he calls, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. So first and foremost, we have number 1, Tom Hopper, who plays Luther Hargreaves, a.k.a. Space Boy, and who is essentially starts off as the leader of the group. He's the alpha, the one who's the most loyal to Reginald Hargreaves. But over the course of the series, we find out that he loses faith with his father because of revelations of what his father did to him and how he treated him. And so what did you make of Luther, first and foremost?
So obviously I have a lot of questions.
Yes.
And I don't think they aren't important, but you know how I am. Like, how did if they're all born at the same time, how to determine which one's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right?
Yeah.
Because they're all the same age. So it isn't like, well, you're the oldest.
No, you just probably assign numbers.
Yes. But because of that, kind of makes them feel like Luther being number 1 gets the feeling he's the oldest, right?
Yes.
He's the leader. He has to be that. He's you get his superpower is strength. And you find out through the series that he had gone through we get a reveal of he had almost died, and to save him his dad had to do something. I don't want to be too spoilerish.
Yes.
But it's a neat reveal.
The show's been out since 2019. I'm pretty sure you could go ahead and spoil it.
Well, but there are people though that are not watching it.
Well,
and so that's
but this
why.
is a review, so we might as well talk about it because that's what we do here. We spoil stuff.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, well, basically you find out that spoiler warning, that Luther's was killed during a mission, and his father saved his life by giving him a serum that essentially turned his upper body into that of an ape.
Yeah, and like, why just the upper body? Why wouldn't it be the whole body? Why wouldn't it be his face?
It's because of the serum. That's how it works.
I understand. Yeah. So Luther is very loyal, very not the brightest bulb.
Right.
In the he is in a lot of ways the stereotypical strong guy. Just all brawn, no brain.
Right.
But I liked him. I liked his.
Well, he's not an idiot. He's just
no,
not.
but
he's not super intelligent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But he's not. I found him very stubborn and also very kind of single-minded. Like, we got to protect Dad. We got to protect Dad. We got to do Dad's legacy. We got to do this. So a very likable character. Tom Hopper does a great job of playing him.
Yeah, he does. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you probably recognize him from playing Dickon Tarley.
Yes.
The guy who got his name made fun of
Absolutely.
before getting crispy fried by Daenerys in Game of Thrones. So number 2, we have Den Castaneda as Diego Hargreaves, a.k.a. the Kraken, who's essentially like a rebellious, but, he's the one who buys the most into the whole superhero thing. He's got this ability to curve the trajectory of anything he throws, which is usually knives. And what he does is, he's the guy. He's essentially like he's a Batman wannabe. He's out there going after bad guys, trying to work with the police, and has kind of like a dubious relationship with them at best. And he's got a love interest who's this detective Eudora Patch, who's his former lover, and it's almost like they have sort of like it's almost like a variation on a Jim Gordon Batman, Commissioner Gordon Batman type relationship. Only this one's like they're the same age and they're romantically involved, and opposite genders, obviously.
Yeah, he is. There's a lot to like about him. He can be a little rough around the edges. Tends to be dismissive of the rest of the family, and like he's out fighting the good fight, and he has a little bit, just a shade, a coloring of Rorschach from Walkman.
What you mean, Watchmen?
Thank you. Yeah, like just a little bit. I don't mind hurting people.
Yeah.
And so interesting character.
See, I almost kind of see him more as like Roy Harper from the Titans, from the Teen Titans.
I could see that.
Like an speedy Arsenal type, the kind of the bad boy of the group.
Yeah, I could see that vibe. That's a very fair vibe. I just thought he was a little bit more not afraid of hurting people.
Yeah.
And that's where that takes. But yeah, very likable guy. I liked his relationship.
He does have kind of a softer side.
Yeah, we find that later. Yeah, and I also really liked his relationship with, his ex-girlfriend. The things, and that ends up being a driver later in the episode in the series.
Yeah.
That I think is really nice. That gives him a very good arc.
Okay. Number 3, Emmy Raver Lampman as Allison Hargreaves, a.k.a. the Rumor, and Allison's a little different from the others because essentially she's a celebrity when this show starts. She has the ability to control minds and bend reality with the phrase, "I heard a rumor." Kind of like, I heard a rumor that you punched yourself in the face.
Right.
And then said victim punches themselves in the face uncontrollably. So that's essentially her power. And she also, Allison has, what we find out during the course of season 1 is that she and Luther have feelings for one another, even though essentially they're brother and sister, but because they're obviously from different mothers and different parents,
right? That
they're physically, genetically not related.
Right.
They're only related because they've been adopted by Reginald Hargreaves. So, on one hand, it's kind of like, well, you have a brother and sister sort of falling in love with one another. but genetically they're not really brother and sister.
Yeah. When this first storyline comes up, my initial reaction is, hey, wait a minute. But then very quickly I go, it is like they are, they were forced together.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you were raised as siblings, there is no at all genetic blood relation whatsoever. So it does make a little sense. I liked Allison a lot. It's an interesting concept that she is quote unquote famous. She's well known. She is like a Beyonce,
Yes,
or something.
well, she's a movie star, so essentially,
Yeah. And so well known, and also one of the things as you read, or as you not read, you continue to watch the series, is that there is, depending on which sibling, there is various levels of celebrity in that, and like that they were well known as the Umbrella Academy. Never did understand that name of why they called the team that, but she has really raised, like she has almost like she started out as a Mickey Mouse Club member,
yes,
and now has become this megastar.
yeah. That's a good comparison. Almost like kind of like what's her name? Miley Cyrus. Back when she was doing Hannah Montana and then
Right.
became a megastar.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But Allison also has a very complicated relationship with Vanya, whom I'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But so number 4, Robert Sheehan as Klaus Hargreaves, a.k.a. the Seance. And Klaus is one of my favorite characters on this show because he's a very flamboyant, starts off being a drug and alcohol addict. He's a bit of a manipulator, very roguish in a sense, very self-absorbed in a lot of ways, and he has the ability to communicate with the dead and temporarily make them corporeal. And through the course of the series, it's revealed that he is able to see number 6, who we'll talk about in a minute, one of the family members that gets killed back when they were kids. And presumably was probably the reason they kind of dissolved as a group.
Yeah.
Initially. So Klaus makes for a lot of great comedic moments in this series. Great character. He's the kind of character that stirs things up really, really well. So what did you make of Klaus?
So you are very aware. I do not like conflict. I do not like
yes, I know.
Out of control characters necessarily. I have to be careful. And so at first I did not like him at all. And I went, okay, this guy's Jane Cobb on Firefly.
Yeah.
I do not like this person at all.
But then you appreciate Jane
exactly
for the guy that stirs things up.
Yes, and then and you later, as you've watched Firefly, you go, okay, he serves a purpose, and what a great character that is. Klaus is so well played by Robert Sheehan, because let's face it, if you saw dead people all the time, all apologies to the Sixth Sense,
yes,
you would want to stay messed up all the time too.
Right.
Right. And you see he is self-medicating. You also see you end up revealing that later in this series, and as we talk about the episodes, he experiences some time travel, has a relationship that haunt him. The idea that you're seeing your dead brother all the time.
Yeah. You can understand why he's self-medicating, because if he's seeing all these dead people.
Absolutely. And I also think that he has he has times of saneness and where he's actually very insightful. And I think, I won't put he's my favorite character, but he is certainly on one of those that I enjoyed the most. I loved his journey. I loved the way he did. I loved how he's struggling to be a better person.
Right.
Right. And how to do this.
Because one of his journeys in this is that he tries to overcome, he regains his sobriety.
Yes.
In this, because he starts off being constantly, either drunk / stoned.
Yeah.
And part of his journey is that he realizes, well, if I get off the booze and the drugs, I can use my powers more effectively.
Yeah, and also there is one of the themes of this is that their father did not do necessary. He was not. First off, he was a horrible
He was
father,
a horrible
but
father,
also he
yes.
was not the best coach at finding their talents and using them to be the best. I mean, one of the scenes you see is where, okay, Klaus needs to get used to talking to dead people, so let me just throw him in a, cemetery or a mausoleum and just let him fight. Are you still afraid of all the ghosts?
Well, he just has this very strict
Yes.
approach, in a very almost traumatizing approach.
Right.
He's cruel.
Yeah, he is cruel, Charles, and his idea of training is the throw you in the deep end and you'll sink or swim.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
That's how you're going to learn to swim. I'm just going to throw you in the deep end.
It's a perfect analogy.
Yeah. So he is the one that I changed the most, where I went, okay, I'm not going to stand this guy, to, okay, I really like this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. He's plenty of humor, just the right amount of smart ass when he needs it. Really.
He's a scene stealer, essentially.
He's not my favorite character, but he is certainly someone I really love.
Okay, so who's your favorite character? Because I have to know now.
Number 5.
Number 5. Okay, well, that's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue you did. So number 5, no other aliases, played by Aidan Gallagher, who essentially, when the Umbrella Academy were kids, was a boy who had the ability to jump through space and time. So essentially, he was a teleporter that could also, as he finds out, can time travel. And his story arc is the most complex, the most timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey, to use a Doctor Who term.
Yes.
That he ends up uses his ability, travels so far in the future that he finds out in a post-apocalyptic world, and he's stuck there. He's unable to get back. And so he survives on his own for decades, gets recruited by this group called the Commission, and ultimately has to betray them in order to get back to his time and warn his family of the impending apocalypse. And in the process, he gets reverted back to his 13-year-old self. And so you have an older man, a guy who's lived a lifetime, in the body of this younger form, because he goes around, he drinks coffee, he acts like an older man to everybody. And he's seen some things, done some horrible things, as we find out, and becomes one of the show's, I think, most interesting characters.
Oh, by far, the most interesting character for me, the one I rooted for the most, and this Aidan Gallagher who plays him,
yeah,
I think
phenomenal, right?
Yeah, everyone who's on the show does a great job, but I think by far, if I'm giving MVP, it's this guy, because he has to play as if he is a 56-year-old man in a 13-year-old boy's body.
Right.
And he does play that really well. That sense of experience and world weariness shows up in this young, youthful, body. Really a strong range. And
nobody takes him seriously because he's short and young,
right.
and he walks around. He still wears this schoolboy uniform.
Yeah, the Umbrella Academy story with the high socks and the shorts and the tie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Like a rich kid's prep school.
Yes, look. And in the movie Castaway, right? Tom Hanks gets a relationship with a volleyball.
Kirk.
Wilson, yes, and he has a relationship with an inanimate object that sells so well. You buy it, you believe it, and it for the very same reason, right? Like, to keep himself from being insane, he was to this mannequin.
Yeah.
And now then, when he goes back to the past, there is that, and the scene when he gives her up is just really poignant.
Yeah.
I love everything about him. He is certainly not flawed. And one of the things we should stress in this series is there is a lot of shades of gray in each of these people.
Yes.
And they do this. And that is part of the reason why the show works so well.
Yep. So number 6, who's not as active, at least in this season. He is more in season 2. I'll just tease that for now. Justin H. Min as Ben Hargreaves, a.k.a. the Horror. And Ben is someone that he has the ability to summon these tentacled, other dimensional horrors from his body and use them to, attack bad guys and whatnot. And when this season begins, when the series begins, we find out that Ben is dead in the present, killed at some point. We don't know exactly how Ben died. But, there's like a memorial statue, and there's the implication that the team kind of dissolved after that death. And because Ben is deceased, well, hey, that means Klaus can see him. He can see his spirit. And essentially, Ben becomes Klaus's Jiminy Cricket, shall we say.
Perfect analogy. Yes.
He's the conscience looming over Klaus, kind of trying to direct him to get his act together. And the two almost have a very symbiotic relationship in a lot of ways. So what did you make of Ben?
So, you first, and I do recommend, I recommend cheating a little bit, Charles. I recommend having Wikipedia up.
Yeah.
And as you're watching to kind of give you okay, and so I knew.
Just to keep everything straight, or? Exactly,
yes. And so to keep, so I understood who Ben was because of that. And I liked that idea. I am looking forward to season 2 because it does look like he plays a bigger part.
Yes, he does.
And I think that's nice. I also think it's interesting the way they pick what are the powers each of the children have, because they are not necessarily a standard, even though Luther is, he's super strong. But the others, like being able to talk to the dead, being able to manipulate people, telekinesis, bringing out
teleportation.
Teleportation makes for an interesting thought, and also that
it's almost like almost like an X-Men vibe in a lot of ways.
And we also, but not even necessarily traditional superpowers. And you mentioned originally we only think Klaus can talk to the dead.
Yes.
It's only during this series, as we go through the first season, he learns this other trick he can do.
Yes.
That he can temporarily make people, corporeal, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that comes out during the course of the series is that where Klaus sees his father.
Yeah.
And his father makes this comment about that he's more powerful than he realizes. There's potential there, untapped potential.
And once again, okay, thank you, worst dad ever. Why don't you work with them instead of just, leaving us mysterious? But yeah, Ben doesn't get a lot to do, but you're intrigued by him.
Yeah.
And they do a great job, right, of showing him next to Klaus, and then they cut, and then he's not. So you can tell it's just in Klaus's mind.
Yeah. And then number 7, we have Ellen Page as Vanya Hargreaves, arguably the most underestimated and the most troubled member of the family, a.k.a. the White Violin. So number 7 is essentially Vanya was told early on by Reginald Hargreaves that she doesn't have any powers, she's very useless. And so essentially she's given the grunt tasks that Reginald Hargreaves doesn't want to do. So Reginald wants to do. He gives her a clipboard and helps him track the progress of the other members of the family. She's treated as almost an outcast from her own family. And one of the big revelations, of course, in the course of season 1 is that, well, hey, Vanya is arguably the most powerful member of the group. And she's so powerful that Sir Reginald felt that he had to suppress her powers because of the threat that she posed. And that comes to fruition. And ultimately, she becomes the major danger of this season. the cause of the apocalypse, as we find out. So what did you make of Ellen Page, whom, we've seen in X-Men The Last Stand and other X-Men movies as Kitty Pryde. She was in Inception. So a lot of people, the movie Super, if you're familiar with that movie.
Yeah.
So what did you make of Vanya?
So by far the biggest name in the cast.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see her playing someone the most normal cast member. They show that she had written a book that wasn't very successful, but talking about her time as being the
outcast of the family.
Yeah, the other one being,
it's called like extra normal or something like that. Yeah.
And I think one of the things I love about this series so much is Allison and Vanya is the only two daughters, the only sisters. They're Allison is trying to bond. She is wanting to be. But she's also been off being a celebrity in her own life. And Vanya's kind of built her own life. She is a violinist. She is a mediocre violinist at best, right? They talk about that where she'll never be first chair. And
a lot of self-esteem issues.
A lot of self-esteem issues.
And the other members of the family have been kind of raised to just kind of forget and ignore her.
Right. Like you would be, if there's a family meeting, they wouldn't even think to include her and even though she says I'm part of the family, and they just don't think of her because she's ordinary. Great reveal in one of the later episodes about how, once again, how big of a jerk Reginald is.
Yes. How
he turned his children against each other way. Absolutely. You love the character, and there, I think what is a good example of great storytelling, Charles, is you want to reach into the screen and talk to someone and say, no, just turn right instead of left, and it's going to be okay. Yeah. And there are some scenes toward the end of the season where if Luther had made just another decision, if these things had happened, what ultimately her becoming the white villain and causing this, blowing up everything wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm worried about her becoming, dangerous, so therefore I'm going to treat her dangerous, therefore she becomes dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
And brilliant storytelling.
All right. And we talked a little bit about Comfiore as Sir Reginald Hargreaves, so I won't bring him up. Pogo. So we had actors named Adam Godley and Ken Hall doing the motion capture and the voice of Pogo, who's kind of like a CGI character in this, an artificially intelligent chimpanzee who essentially, is older, is an old chimpanzee right in the present, essentially has served kind of like the Alfred Pennyworth role in this. That, he's the one who actually cares about the family, unlike Sir Reginald, and looks out for them, looks out for their well-being, essentially is the mentor that they need, the father figure that they need. And ultimately, he's one that pays the price because Vanya ends up killing him in a very climactic moment later in the series.
He reminded me of the great Alan Moore, Tom Strong's comic book where he had the King Solomon, right? Yeah. A gorilla that is it does this manservant. I thought that was really well done. Great CGI, and also he truly does care about these children. He cares for them as they're now adults, and while he wants to respect Reginald's legacy, he also understands he wasn't perfect and he should do more. And I know you're going to mention her in a minute, right? But like between Pogo being trying their dad, and then they have a mom that is very unusual. You are wondered why they are not more messed up.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I think because of Pogo and their mom, that kept them from being more messed up, and helped savage them. They probably could have been a lot worse.
Now, who did is in the? I don't remember from the series or in the comic who gives them their names.
You mean the?
Yeah, like Klaus, Allison.
Well, we don't. We don't know.
Okay,
We don't know that. At least I don't know that.
okay, fair enough.
But presumably, yeah, they were maybe their parents, maybe because they were probably given names when they were born.
Yeah.
But Reginald Hargreaves just refers to them as number 1, number 2, number 3, etc.
Okay.
So I'm guessing their natural parents did when he obtained them through whatever financial means. So we talked about the mom. Jordan Claire Robbins plays Grace Hargreaves, a.k.a. their mom. And we find out that mom, who's this very 50s throwback, kind of like someone you would see like on an old 1950s TV show.
Yes.
June
Cleaver.
Very yes. June Cleaver, exactly. With the big pleated skirt and, being very helpful and friendly. And we find out that, she's essentially a robot that Sir Reginald created, who essentially acts as the Umbrella Academy's adoptive mother. So she's the one who cooks for them, looks after their wounds, mothers them essentially. And so as a result, because of Sir Reginald's lack of interest, the family essentially treats Pogo as their dad and Mom as their mom. And as a result, they care a lot more about their mom and Pogo than they do Sir Reginald.
Yeah, they do. And they have a great affection to Mom. They talk about her. They are protective of her. They worry about her. They do not think of her as a robot. They think of her as their actual mom.
Yeah, especially Diego, who during the course of this season, Mom starts to break down.
Yes.
It's been, few decades, and she's starting to malfunction. And the team seems to find, at one point seems to think that Mom accidentally poisoned their father and killed him. And so they talk about hey, do we need to shut her down or whatnot? And Diego, in a very powerful moment, because Diego cares so much about her, even though she's a robot, is the one who does it and disables her, only for Pogo to later restore her, only to have her destroyed when the mansion is destroyed at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
So what did you make of Diego's that moment?
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful, and there is a lot of subterfuge and lying to people. Yeah, of just also people doing things and not telling the others and going on a lot of stuff. This is definitely a series that is one long story, not individual episodes that build together. This is built to be, if you don't binge it, this is a novel. This is not individual. There are TV series, I think Fringe did a great job of telling individual stories in each episode, yet building a bigger arc. This is a bigger arc, period. Yes. And there may be, I won't say individual
with a lot
episodes,
going on.
Yeah. I'm not saying individual episodes aren't entertaining, but they are truly chapters in the story versus an individual short story.
Yeah, I mean, there are little smaller stories within them, like, say, Klaus's trip to Vietnam, or, just that Luther and Allison's romance.
Yes.
Within the show, subplots.
Yes.
But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it is essentially treated as a 10-episode story. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, and so on. So we also had, in addition to the family, we had some characters that pretty notable. So Hazel and Cha-Cha, we should talk about them. Hazel, played by a guy, Cameron Britton, and Cha-Cha played by the more musically famous Mary J. Blige.
Yeah.
In an acting role, who are essentially a pair of assassins that are sent back to essentially stop Five from doing what he's doing. By the commission, by Kate Walsh, who plays the handler. And so what did you make of these characters? Because Hazel, in the course of this season, he's disillusioned. He wants more out of his life. He's burned out.
Yes.
And he ends up falling for the Agnes, this owner of a donut store.
Yeah.
And they have a romance, and essentially Hazel's ready to just chuck everything and leave with Agnes and have a life together. While meanwhile, Cha-Cha, his partner, is all business and a little bit more sociopathic and doesn't take too kindly to this. So what did you make of these characters?
So Hazel and Cha-Cha are Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap, except dressed like men in black with guns. The idea is they are sent to right things that were wrong, or specifically stop people from changing time. In other words, the Bureau, which Kate Walsh, the wonderful Kate Walsh, she is amazing in this series. I've always been a fan of hers. Loved her in Grey's Anatomy and the other work she's done. She is amazing in this. And the idea, right, is history is supposed to go this way.
Yes.
And and we need to keep it in path, even though the way history does, you end up the world getting almost destroyed.
Yeah, the apocalypse. Yeah, so essentially they want to preserve the apocalypse.
Right, because the idea is if you change it, things could be even worse.
Yes.
Or we wouldn't have gotten our power. You're not quite sure if they're good or not. Great scenes. Hazel is especially likable. And they're at the donut shop discussing, like, do I want a grape donut? Do I want a glazed donut? Yeah. And the weariness of, I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired. He is a typical employee, too. Like, man, they're cutting our vacation time.
He's complaining about stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, okay, our per diem is cut. We're now staying in a low-level hotel. Really nice interactions with them. And this does have a lot of timey-wimey, not quite as bad of like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of that taste in there, like we're going to give you this scene from a different angle, and there is an episode where basically everything that happened in that episode is wiped away because of a jump in time.
Yeah.
Which is very cool.
Yeah, and there's a great scene. Hazel and Cha-Cha have this one of my favorite scenes where they're essentially tasked with like they go to they go to this lab where they make these artificial eyes.
Yes.
That Five is so fixated on, and they end up getting stoned, and just having this like this big wild moment. I thought was pretty good. So.
And very violent against each other, and
they later have a fight because Cha-Cha ends up kidnapping Agnes and threatening to kill her.
Yeah.
And Hazel finds out about it because Cha-Cha's not fond of that Hazel wants to leave with Agnes, and so she's like, well, if I kill her, then you'll get back on board.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then Kate Walsh, she's fantastic as the handler. A bit of, she's very power trippy. She's Five's former boss. And so the two have this very antagonistic relationship. And, she ends up, she gets shot in the head by Hazel at the end in the season 1 finale.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things nice is the scenes between her and Five is, I know what you're doing, but I'm going to act like you don't. I'm acting like what you don't know what you're doing, and there is a lot of gamesmanship in their dialogue back and forth. And I know what you're really thinking, even though what you're saying made for a lot of fun. That's some really great scenes.
Yeah, I mean it's very well written because they essentially out anticipate each other.
Yes,
because they're both experienced at this. Five and the handler, that they know what the other's move is going to be, and so they try to anticipate that. But then the other out anticipates that out anticipation.
Yes.
So it gets very convoluted, but it's a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're already an hour in, and we haven't even gotten to the episodes yet. So. So there's a lot to go through.
Let's talk about Leonard Peabody, right? The villain.
Yeah, we should talk about it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So John Magaro plays Leonard Peabody, a.k.a. Harold Jenkins. And through most of the series, he's Vanya's love interest. He's this guy. He's kind of a nebbish kind of character. And he approaches Vanya as a wannabe violin student of hers.
Yes.
She's apparently, to make some money to get by, she teaches violin
Right.
to people. And so he approaches her as a wannabe violinist.
Yeah.
And then, of course, gets to know her. They get closer. And through the course of the series, you find out that, well, hey, he's manipulating her.
Right.
And you find out that essentially what he was, there's a big revelation that he was a kid who was a big admirer of the Umbrella Academy when they were kids.
Right.
And became obsessed with them. And he shows up at this one celebration or whatever, and he's got his own mask on that he made, and they're like ready to join the team, and he gets publicly humiliated by Sir Reginald Hargreaves.
Yes.
And shut down, and as a result, he becomes bitter. But because he's so obsessed with them, it's almost like this compulsive behavior that he has to learn more about them. And so he ends up discovering Sir Reginald's diary, which has all the information about Vanya's potential in it. And so as a result, he works on her, and with the idea that he wants her to discover her powers and unleash her true potential.
Yeah, the premise, right, is he is born the same day as they were, but
Yes.
he was not born. He was born through traditional manners.
Yeah, he didn't have any powers.
Yeah, and so his mother died in childbirth or right after.
And his father was abusive.
Yeah, and so there is this whole, and then you don't, there is in the very first episode. The Claw steals something so he could go buy drugs, and that's where you find out later in, one of the later episodes, that's where the diary came from.
Yeah. It was inside this very ornate case.
Yeah.
And so Klaus is going to pawn the case, so he tosses the contents into a dumpster.
Right.
But then Leonard Peabody, aka Harold Jenkins, gets that diary, gets a hold of that diary.
And so this is and I can only imagine the writer's room with the whiteboard and index cards to build the intricate storyline, because there's a lot of threads, there's a lot of different things going through all the different episodes that gives us a payoff. And I think, Charles, I haven't seen season 2 yet, but I felt really happy with season 1,
right?
Even though there is a cliffhanger.
Yes.
I feel like you get a full story in this season, but then setting you up for what's the next adventure.
Exactly. So everything culminates in this climax with Harold Jenkins essentially being, to use a comic book analogy, if you're an X-Men fan and you remember the Hellfire Club and you remember Mastermind, Jason Wingard, and how he manipulated Jean Grey and essentially helped turn her into Dark Phoenix. That's essentially what happens here with Vanya. And so that, in the final episode, Vanya is power tripping at this point, because her powers have finally, after years of repression and being subdued by medication and whatnot, that she unleashes her powers, goes that dark route, that Dark Phoenix route, kills Pogo, destroys the mansion, and ultimately it all leads to this theater where there's this big climax, because you've got the Umbrella Academy having to fight against soldiers from the Commission, and they're trying to stop Vanya from unleashing the apocalypse. And ultimately, and this is after Vanya had, we didn't talk about this, but Allison had approached Vanya trying to reach her, and Vanya had lashed out because remembering that Allison had helped lock her away, in a vault, until her powers were able to be controlled. So Vanya lashes out and slices the throat of Allison.
Because we've seen that, like, I think one of the really small scenes that was really nice is Allison is with her young daughter,
Yeah.
and her daughter is being the way young children can be, pushy and like, again, no, I don't want to do this, no, I do this. And Allison, without even thinking, goes, I heard a rumor that you're tired. And all of a sudden, her husband overhears that and is shocked because you've used your powers to manipulate your own child.
Right.
The other point, I don't think we're going to have time to go through every episode, but there's a couple things I want to talk to you about, especially the music in the series.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. I was trying to wrap up the final episode, and then we could talk about the music a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll let you go back to it, but the beauty of this series is you start out with them all on separate pages.
Yeah. And
by the end, they truly are back again a family and a team. Dysfunctional, perhaps,
yes.
But that is part of the journey that we see in this series. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, and with Vanya, even when everything's all said and done, Vanya's with a group, even though there's a lot of lingering issues after everything that's happened that need to be resolved. So in this final episode, the White Violin, Allison incapacitates Vanya as she's about to unleash her energy, and so it gets redirected out into space and destroys the moon. So essentially you have moon fragments raining down and essentially destroying the world. But 5 suggests that they use his abilities to travel back in time to stop this particular apocalypse. And as everything gets consumed, the Umbrella Academy transport back in time. And that's the cliffhanger at the end of the series.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, rather. Excuse me.
We've hit a lot of highlights, but this is something that we have given highlights only. There is a lot of storyline that we don't share.
There's so much to talk about
here. This is really good. So, and we want to leave some of it to do. In previous episodes, I've talked about how much I enjoyed on Stargirl, the amount of music they've used.
Yes.
This is on steroids. The soundtrack of this series is amazing. And so many good songs, so many on-point songs. You want to talk a little bit about that, Charles? You had shared with this. We've talked about this before, like Next Stop Everywhere or Phantom Zones. We've talked about this as I was watching. So you want to share a little bit of that?
Yeah. So Gerard Way, who, like I talked about, was one of the co-creators of the Umbrella Academy. Well, he's also the lead singer of My Chemical Romance, the band. And so obviously he has a very heavy musical background as a musician. And so I have to think he had a very heavy role in helping to pick the songs for this series to match up with episodes. And especially, one of the great things about the Umbrella Academy, and this carries into season 2, they have some phenomenal fight scenes. And as a result, they have some great music that accompanies each fight and gives it its own individual flavor. And, just it has some fantastic songs. So like right from the start, we get in episode 1, the first thing we hear is the Kinks picture book. The classic Kinks song from the 60s. Kind of an obscure Kinks song, but it plays so well and sets the tone so perfectly as you're seeing Sir Reginald with, being followed by all these baby carriages.
Yes.
And then, you get other songs in this. You get Istanbul, Not Constantinople by They Might Be Giants. Run Boy Run by by Woodkid, which it plays up very effectively when you see 5 in the future.
Yeah.
Etta Mance, Goody Two Shoes, Queen's Don't Stop Me Now.
Yeah.
Paloma Faith's cover of INXS's Never Tear Us Apart, which was very powerful. The Yardbirds' Lost Woman. The Hollies Were Through. Sinner Man by Nina Simone. I talked about that great moment where Hazel and Cha-Cha were stoned. That gets accompanied by this song called Shing-a-Ling by Tom Swoon, which, It's this wild, crazy moment that fits that perfectly. Noel Gallagher, who was one of the lead singers in Oasis, his solo band, Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, does In the Heat of the Moment. Gerard Way contributes a couple of tracks, including a cover of Happy Together, and at the end, in the final episode, he does a cover of Hazy Shade of Winter, which of course was
Yeah.
the Simon and Garfunkel classic. But Gerard Way does a version of the Bangles cover of that.
Yes.
More of a rocking version
Yeah.
of that.
And by far, one of the best is toward the end where Vanya is playing because the violin. So there is this classical music, and she's so powerful.
Yes.
And you see the scenes of her just involved with her music, and there was some great fight scenes to that classical music. Really great choreography.
One of my favorites has to be Leslie Gore's "Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows."
Yes.
Which was a very, very hilarious moment that gets used. I think it was. I'm trying to remember. I think it was. It was in like the penultimate episode, but I thought it was done really well. And you get like Saturday Night by the Bay City Rollers. You get Barracuda by Heart. So many great songs in this.
Yeah, I mean they do a great mix of indie rock songs and then top 40 rock songs and compared
classic rock songs you get, and then oldies, from the 50s and 60s. So
really well done.
A lot for everybody. Anybody who has a particular musical taste to enjoy.
Yeah, and like I said, we've been a little bit over hours, so I know we need to wrap this up. But there have been a lot of good comic book TV shows over this past, 5 or 6 years, and I certainly I feel like this is a golden age of comic book TV. I'm not going out on a limb here, but this is certainly worthy of anything we've done. I mean,
Now you understand why I was recommending it for so long. You need to watch this show.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And it's hard to rank things because, because they're all great in their own way.
Well, especially when we're talking about the season as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you think about how well Watchmen was and how powerful that was, this is in its own way just as well done.
Yes.
This is just really, really amazing how well Netflix has done, and I'm so glad. I'm looking forward to the second season because you have said it's just really it's really well done.
Yeah, it's great. So kind of to set it up a little bit without going into too much detail. So the second season is based more on the second miniseries from the comics, The Umbrella Academy Dallas, where you have the premise of about centered, of course, around JFK's assassination on November 22nd, 1963. So what you find out through the course, when they time traveled at the end of season 1, they end up back in the 60s and ultimately get involved. There's a without getting into detail about that just yet, there's a lot of things going on. The commission's involved, and the handler returns. And so even though she was shot, so I'll just leave it there. And a lot of it is centered around Kennedy's death. Everything builds up to that.
Good.
So lots to unpack. Another great season of soundtracks. I'm actually putting showed Jesse, I made this my own because they didn't release a proper soundtrack. They released a score, but they didn't release a proper soundtrack. So I made my own custom CD. And because the songs are so good.
Yeah,
and season 2 is certainly no exception. But season 2 has more of a 60s flavor to it.
Nice.
So a lot more of 60s influenced songs. A lot of 60s R&B. You get Sam and Dave, Sam Cooke solo, Aretha Franklin. So a lot of great R&B Motown artists, in addition to some modern tracks as well.
Well, hopefully in the next week or two, Lynn and I are going to be able to binge, and then we'll come back and talk season 2. So, but thank you for continuing to remind me, and I appreciate us getting a chance to kind of talk about something pretty special in the Fandom Zone.
Yeah, I think so. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, so I'm glad. So my deepest thanks to your wife for pushing you into watching this.
Yes, absolutely.
Giving you that final nudge that needed to be happen. So I guess let her know her check's in the mail. All right.
I will do that.
All right. We don't have any fan mail, but, because obviously we were kind of like not sure what we were going to talk about, so that's understandable, I think. But if you want to get a hold of us, reach out to us at fandomzonecast@gmail.com. That's fandomzonecast@gmail.com. Or you can reach us on Twitter at fandomzonecast on Twitter, or Facebook, the Fandom Zone Podcast, or you can find us on Instagram at Fandom Zone Podcast. We'd love it if you reach out and liked and follow us. If you enjoy what we do, please share our links. Help people bring us to, get the awareness out. We'd appreciate that. We'd love it if you would go to Apple Podcasts, rate and review us. That would be fantastic. And because that helps people find us as well. And Jesse, where can they reach you?
Yeah, and the other thing I want to urge them is Charles and I have a rough thought about what we're going to do over the next few months, but we'd love some suggestions for people like, hey, what would you like us to talk about and share? So I can be reached on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can hear me every week talking Doctor Who and all that implies with a certain co-host, a charming and debonair co-host, Charles.
Is he bigger than me?
We are in the process of doing more Doctor Who rewatch, going through classic episodes and Big Finish episodes. So if you are looking for something to binge and you're like, maybe I should check out this Doctor Who thing, first off, you should. And secondly, we are there for you. We're, almost 200 episodes of Doctor Who.
Next Stop Everywhere.
Yeah, Next Stop Everywhere. Almost 200 episodes of us discussing episodes. I was like, how do I keep saying episodes? And then lastly, I want to bring up set listing Bruce. As we're recording this, we're in the middle of September, our 5-year anniversary.
Happy anniversary,
Bruce. Yes, thank you. On just as we recorded this, Friday, we had a special episode where Charles and I used the TARDIS to go back and pick what concerts we'd go to. And coming up, this will be after this episode, but if you go to the feed, Maureen Van Zant, wife of little Steven Van Zant, Silvio on The Sopranos, wife joined me for an episode, and we talked a little bit of music. We talked about Fosse, we talked about some of her arts, and we talked about the early days of the E Street Band, so please check that out.
That's cool.
Yeah, Charles, how about you? What do you got going on during this fun time?
You know me, I always have something going on. So, of course, you can reach me on Twitter at Charles Skaggs or at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Would love it if you did that. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. We're going to talk about all the stuff we talk about here on the Fandom Zone podcast. All kinds of comic book TV news, comics news of my other podcasts, comics and sci-fi, news of my other podcasts that I do for Southgate Media, including the aforementioned Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where we're about to record episode 199 with Rob Southgate, our executive producer on all of our Southgate Media group shows. And then we'll be heading to the Big 200 with Jesse and a lot of great guest stars. So stay tuned for that. And then Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, where DJ Nick and I recently finished up Doom Patrol Season 2. That was enjoyable. We had a lot of fun for that. We're kind of on hiatus now. Hopefully we'll get some news out of DC Fandom on September 12th. They're supposed to feature extended Titans panels. So maybe we'll get some news about Titans Season 3. And hopefully some information about the fate of the DC Universe streaming service. So if we do, we'll get that out. And then Ghostwood Twin Peaks podcast I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and currently we are doing We're just about to record the third in our series of 6 episodes where we're doing a retrospective of Twin Peaks actors that have appeared on The X-Files. With a certain David Duchovny, who was an actor on Twin Peaks. And this week we're going to be talking Michael Horse, who some people may remember as, if you ever saw the film The Legend of the Lone Ranger from 1981 or 2, he played Tano in that movie, and he has a lot of because he's Native American, he's appeared in a lot of episodes on TV about Native Americans, and he was also Deputy Hawk on Twin Peaks. And we're going to be talking the X-Files episode Shapes, which is a good one from the first season of the X-Files. So I hope everybody checks that out because we got a lot of feedback about that, and it's been very positive. So I hope everybody enjoys that. And Jesse, now the question becomes, well, next time in the Fandom Zone, what are we going to talk about? Do we talk the Umbrella Academy Season 2? Do we talk The Boys Season 2, which just started, dropping 3 episodes, and I've watched the first one, which is fabulous. So lots to talk about. Or do we talk about something else? Or do we talk individual episodes? Do we talk season reviews? So got some thinking to do.
Yeah, we do. I know I want to...
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah,
I'm about halfway through Lucifer. I would love for us to do kind of wrap up on the latest season of that. I definitely agree that it would be good if we could do... if we could do not every episode of The Boys, but kind of take it in jump size. I think
with the Umbrella Academy, there's a lot, because we tried doing the Boys Season 1 review, and then this review, there was so much to talk about that we didn't get to it all.
Yeah, but that's okay. We gave the people a flavor. That's it.
Yeah, but I kind of like to give a little more. When I'm doing a season review, I want to do it properly. I want to do episode by episode, giving all the details and lots of things to talk about, because there's so much going on in these episodes. So my apologies that we didn't get to cover everything like I wanted, but unfortunately we're a victim of time.
Absolutely. And that way they can go explore it. It's good. We had a good episode. This was a good discussion. And as always, Charles, It was a lot of fun talking with you. I appreciate everything you do. And yes, we will be back probably every other week. And so we'll figure it out. We'll keep you posted. Well, follow us on Twitter, and you'll see Charles and I talking about what we're going to discuss.
Yeah, or Facebook, or all that. So, so the more you stay, this is why we want you to kind of find us and reach us, because that way you can get the information as we figure things out. So,
yeah.
All right. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed our discussion of the Umbrella Academy Season 1. Hopefully, we'll get around to Season 2. And come on back next time for the next episode of the Fandom Zone podcast. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.